I need to save this realm. This is my vow.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to that retro game that came out just last year. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about what I adoringly call Indie Skyrim, Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. Now, if you listen to a website like PC Gamer, you'll see that this game is called an Elder Scrolls wannabe. But for me personally, as someone who loves the Bethesda-style open-world RPG, I have embraced this new era of Scrolls-likes, all the way from AAA like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, down to more AA style development like Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon, and even indie games like Ardenfell. I am all over any Scrolls-like, if you want to call it that. But the reason I want to return to Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon is because the post-launch support by developer Questline has been incredible, and I've covered this game a multitude of times on my Mr. Matty Plays channel. I mean, you can just see on screen here the litany of videos that we have posted about its DLC, its various updates, and now since it's been almost a year since that game has come out, I wanted to take all these updates, all of this DLC, the base game, and reassess things 1 year later. Is this game worth your time? Spoiler, it is, but obviously there are some caveats that you should be aware of even to this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, get cozy. Let's talk a little bit about Indie Skyrim, aka Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. If you're new here and you're into nostalgic or retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. The first thing I want to clarify is how exactly this game gets the nickname Indie Skyrim, because for example, there is a little open world game making waves right now called Crimson Desert, and a lot of people are saying that is the next Skyrim. I've realized that my interpretation of Skyrim and what it did for me and what Bethesda games do for my brain is very different from other people. So for me, when I think of a Bethesda style open world game, I think of things like first-person interaction, the ability to switch my camera between first and third person. I think about how there aren't really a traditional usage of cutscenes, but rather when you talk to a character, if the conversation is initiated and you're across the room, that's how it's gonna look. And for a lot of people, that's very awkward, but for me, that's real. That's how it would look. Games like Fallout 4 would obviously try to change that by using a more, quote, cinematic camera that changed angles as characters were talking. It's the sense of freedom, it's the loot drive that kind of gets you into the questing of the game. Like, hey, check out this dungeon over here, whether it be through a quest or through your own exploration and finding something totally unique there. And within that dungeon is its own story written through the game's many interactables, whether it be notes that you pick up, drawings on the wall, that sort of stuff that tells a story. And the ability to flow from one place to the other, it's the way combat works, where you can have like a spell in one hand and a melee weapon in another hand. A lot of this game evokes those types of memories from Skyrim. Maybe not its exact scale and scope, which is why it's called Indie Skyrim, and it's not one wholly interconnected open world, but rather 3 hubs based upon 3 acts of the story. I mean, this game is so Elder Scrolls-y like that you literally start the game off as a prisoner, which is like a staple in Elder Scrolls games. So yeah, it just checks all the weird boxes for me. Another key aspect that really gets me into Tainted Grail is its underpinning lore. That kind of drives a lot of my interest here. What you have here is Avalon, which was King Arthur's island. He ruled here for centuries, but when he died, things started to fall apart here. And now you're exploring this shattered land, tore up by war and disease. It's fractured everywhere. But interestingly, you have bonded with the very soul of King Arthur. And so it's this dark, brooding RPG where you're exploring the history of King Arthur and like what happened, and it's a tale of like betrayal and deceit. And I won't sell you on it being the most amazing story, but I did find it relatively captivating. The first act is phenomenal and really shows the game at its best. I will say that the second and third act gradually taper off, and I did like the finale of the game. And while a lot of comparisons between Tainted Grail and Skyrim are drawn, really this game does mix together a couple other elements here. It's very reminiscent to me of The Witcher. It's very reminiscent to me of also the Souls-like games. It reminds me of a Souls-like game, not in difficulty, but really in how your character is built. Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon has deep character building. The progression systems are similar to Skyrim, where as you do certain things, that level will go up. But then as you take time to invest your skill points, which really define your character's build and like how effective you are in combat, when you really start putting the time into that sort of stuff and the points into that sort of stuff, it does pigeonhole you a bit. To respec, you have to find these specific potions that, at least prior to the DLC and updates, were a little bit more difficult to come by. But it's here you can invest in things like archery, magic, different branches of magic, whether it be healing magic or destructive magic, different types of spells. I made a summoner class that I had people fighting for me the entirety of my Tainted Grail playthrough. You can be two-handed, great sword wielding warrior. You could be whatever you want. So the character building in this game is really great, but the way points are allocated between all of your stats, both skill points as well as, again, those attributes, did remind me a little bit of the Souls games. And then the music is really what kind of evokes that Witcher feel. It's that very kind of uneasy piece there's something cozy about the music, but you also know like this is a completely ravaged land that you're going to explore every corner of. What you should also be aware of with Tainted Grail is the game, even post all the patches, is still a bit difficult. They've smoothed a lot of the edges. They rebalanced a lot of the game with the post-launch support, because when I played and reviewed it, I was a little less high on the game coming out of finishing it at launch, because Acts 2 and 3 really crunch you. And not in a fun way. Like, the game's combat system is pretty solid. You have everything from your dashing and dodging to magic and parrying and blocking. Like, it's got all of these great mechanics, and the bosses are challenging, and they also have their own suite of mechanics that you have to keep track of, and it really keeps you on your toes. Like, that's really fun when the combat system is clicking nowadays. But when it first came out, the difficulty spikes were pretty immense, and it didn't feel fair or fun, because sometimes it wasn't even difficulty spikes, it was just very spongy enemies. This is coming from someone who paid close attention to their build. Like, this game has incredible build synergy, not just with the skills and the attributes, but what your gear set does and how that accelerates your build. Like, I went all in on a glass cannon build, which I knew, okay, if I get hit, I die, but I know I was capping out on how much damage you could do, and at launch, that felt pretty sad. I felt like they could have done a little bit more. And there are still times, even when I'm playing the game now, that it feels like you could do a little bit more damage. The result, though, again, when the game feels at its best in Act 1, oh my god, some of these fights are incredible when you combine that with the music, the tension, the loot rewards. Some really good stuff. What also kind of brought this video to life is, again, that continuous post-launch support. As we're talking about the game right now, they just dropped a brand new third free DLC called Merlin's Tomb. That's something that you should be aware of, as all the DLC I'm about to talk about here has mostly been free, with Sanctuary of Saris being the main paid DLC, and it's about a 10 to 15 hour story that is well worth your money, but also completely just brings you into this Cthulhu-like environment. It kicks so much ass, both that and the music and the exploration loop. Like, they did a phenomenal job with it. But this newest update here brings about Merlin's Tomb's DLC, and it's designed to be for the end game. This is something that people really wanted with Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon, a kind of final challenge area here. And so they describe it as hidden deep within the desolate peaks of the Forlorn Swords, the lost secrets of Merlin lie sealed, guarded by brutal trials forged for one purpose, and that's to test the true king of Avalon. It's an endgame dungeon that you can only access once you've collected all of the King's Soul fragments, and it's balanced around level 75 characters. So this is some like serious endgame stuff. They combine this with their latest patch, which makes some tweaks, but also hilariously just adds a ton of different quality life improvements to, I think, one of the more flawed parts of the game, which is Act 3. What they've gone through with each of these major patches for the game is continuously just sweeping act after act, balance update after balance update. So even in this new Act 3 update, they've added new weapons, they've improved the terrain in some areas, they've changed how some enemies behave, they've added some generic weapons, they've changed some of the loot. But really the creme de la creme, the crown jewel of the DLC for Tainted Grail, which I think put people on this game again, where they went, okay, I gotta pay attention, is absolutely Sanctuary of Saris. This is a completely new storyline in a city underwater, and you're following the trail of Nimue and the deserters who challenged King Arthur. So what happens in a lot of the story, at least initially, is you hear a lot of these tales, and because King Arthur's voice actor is incredible in this game, like, just take a listen.
It may not seem like it at times, but one always has a choice, even if it's as simple as pushing onwards when others might back down. You brought me back. This is what matters, and for that, I am grateful.
He's amazing, right? So you kind of, just similar to, I think of Ulysses from Fallout New Vegas, you hang on to every word he's saying and he kind of paints a picture in your head. But now with some of this DLC, you get visuals on the stories being told, the stories that are inferred, relationships that King Arthur had, and you're unpacking them alongside him. This also added an entirely new progression system alongside 100 new pieces of equipment. And keep in mind, this was dropped in their launch year, and this wasn't like they went dark on things. They dropped 2 massive updates in that same year and then did Sanctuary of Saris. And now they're going to do more DLC content. They just dropped this newest update we're talking about a couple months after Sanctuary of Saris. Like, you can kind of expect to hear from them every few months. So it's not like it's live servicey by any means, but they continuously pour into this game and tackle almost every issue it has. Keyword almost. There is one lingering problem with Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon you should be aware of, minus its kind of lingering balance concerns that I still have. It really is the console version. Specifically on PlayStation, to the credit of Questline, they have been very transparent about their issues with this, and they are working on it, but this game is not fantastic on consoles. Specifically, again, PlayStation 5, where you get some awful screen tearing, some awful frame drops. Questline has spoken about how it's a combination of the engine and PlayStation 5, and they're just having real issues with this, so I do respect them not running away from it. But if you are watching this and you only have a PlayStation, you definitely want to do your research and make sure this is something that you can tolerate. I'm lucky that I was able to play this on PC, so while there is just general jank in this game, which is fine, you know, again, Bethesda-style RPG, I'm cool with a little bit of jank, but I didn't have to deal with a lot of the technical snafus that a lot of console players had to fight through. So yeah, when you put it all together, this is why it kind of earns its name to me as Indie Skyrim. It kind of taps into that gameplay loop all the way up to the DLC loop that Bethesda did. Like, I remember Bethesda used to ship a game and then be like, here's a couple months later, your next expansion, it's going to add like 20 hours of content. You're going to spend some more time here. It's going to tell you a new story, and then we'll see you in a couple more months. And I just love everything that this team is doing. I'm very, very big on whatever their next game is going to be, which I imagine will be a sequel to Tainted Grail, because there is all the potential in the world, and I think that one will really take over. But for me, I love keeping an eye on any of these Scrolls likes. I'm so happy to see a rise in them, and I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on this game down below. So please, fire away. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I've got for you on Indie Skyrim. Take excellent care of yourselves, and I will catch you all in the next episode of Retro Rebound. Peace out.